we just have to look for ways to be creative. I think it just brings out a really nice, playful side to ourselves. Well, I suppose it's responsible design, isn't it? It's about kind of like taking the task of designing clothes and making sure that everybody thinks about it from all the different angles. And it's not just about what looks good anymore. It's about what is the best way of doing things. So, yeah, I guess it's responsible design.
This is Stokely, where we tried to be involved, to listen and learn for us all to evolve. So welcome to you and welcome the world. We hope you enjoy the stories to be told. Stokely is a creative endeavour to listen, learn and evolve through the art of conversation. And here's your host, Mael.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Stokely. Thank you for joining us today. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Miles Johnson. Miles is a responsible and environmental design consultant with specialist focus on how to action change in the fashion industry. Miles has led teams in companies such as Patagonia as the design director. He's brought advances and inspiration to their sustainable design and development, and it's also been said that his creative vision has had a lasting positive impact on their product line. Miles has an incredible influence and experience in his space of genius, as well as being a kind and down-to-earth soul. I'm super grateful for Miles' time and his openness in our conversation today, as I am equally grateful for your time whilst joining us. I'd like to thank the traditional custodians upon the lands where this podcast is created and listened to, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. I really hope you enjoy this episode of Stokely, and I hope it allows you to develop a conversation or a thought about how we can design and create things differently in our day-to-day world. Please let us know what you think, and again, I really hope you enjoy this conversation with Miles, a very, very down-to-earth and kind soul.
It's good to be having or being able to kind of have conversations like this or with other people that also really believe in the cause and just make the voice kind of clearer in a way.
Yeah.
You know, because every time we talk about it, it just gets more refined in a way, I suppose. With the way we speak to each other, the language is kind of like forming itself. So I kind of have I'm part of like a WhatsApp design group of people, kind of thinkers, and every day it's like people exchanging kind of ideas and, you know, challenges or whatever it is that they have in front of them. And then, you know, I've found through lockdown, especially when everything felt like it was all just being put on pause, the mutterings, the murmurings of like the plotting kind of, it felt really kind of like empowering to kind of like be a part of a group that was actually all about getting out to change the world when the world wakes up again. So that felt really good.
Awesome. Like
Yeah,
an underground movement happening. And
yeah. Apart from, of course, there's like thousands of us, but we just don't all know each other. So, I mean, I find it quite interesting watching Extinction Rebellion form and grow and be recognised as a movement which is actually altering and shifting people's perceptions, or maybe not sometimes, you know. I think sometimes people look at it and just go, oh, they're just going over the top. But on the whole, I think they're pulling some really good stunts. Did you see the one that they did the other day outside Condé Nast, outside Vogue House? On the day that Vogue brought out the magazine with a huge article about how it supported Extinction Rebellion and what they were trying to do, they superglued themselves to the outside of the building with a huge slogan that said, "Publish the truth." Fantastic. Wow. It looks amazing. The police were all around them. They were like literally glued to the doors. No one could get in. No one could get out of the building.
Wow.
So good. I think, you know, a bit more of that sort of go on then, do something. You know, there's so much talk. It drives me nuts sometimes when we have to have those conversations where someone would be saying, we need to, we should, we have to, as a prefix to something that we need to do, right? And it sounds really powerful. It's like, yes, we do, we need to do that. And yes, we all should change and do that. But a lot of the time, there's not much action following that. But when I see what Extinction Rebellion are doing just on the streets and with what they can kind of like do to kind of gain some attention, at least, and disrupt, because Patagonia was all about disruption as well, you know, not as much as it could have been, but it in its heart, it wanted to disrupt. Oh, did you see that new label that they just brought out?
Yeah.
Vote the ass out.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's been around for quite a long time, and I only found out recently that Yvonne kind of like had used that before. So I don't know whether it was like Bush or can't remember, like in his time of Patagonia, how many terrible presidents there've been. It's probably started with Reagan.
You know, it is funny in the actual kind of communications with that label. It is said to be like nonpartisan. You know, it's just a collective. Anyone who is not working towards addressing the climate crisis, we want them to be voted out. You know, but there's this underlying, like, I guess, you know, we all know who's doing a better job of that and who's doing a not so good job of that, and I guess people put two and two together. But there is this kind of real raw humor to it, like, oh, he's talking about that person, he's the arsehole, vote him out. But the real situation is we need to vote anyone out who's not participating in changing what is, because that's what
the label says. I mean, we all think we know what it means, but actually it's a much broader term of like, get the assholes out. Because unfortunately, as we all know, we are the minority at the moment, because the world is being run by people who are voted in. And so that's our struggle a lot of the time. But we just have to just make sure that everything that we're doing makes sense. You know, it can't be sort of like ethereal or flim-flam. People could just go, oh, just shut up. That doesn't, you know, doesn't really make sense. If we have like evidence, if we listen to science, if we really study the kind of like the numbers, which, you know, doesn't always come that naturally, but, you know, it's that is really where we kind of like need to focus, I think, especially on the science.
It's like you said before, using the Vogue example, you know, tell us the truth. There's a truth there that can't be shifted and skewed in the way of someone's favor, because it's the truth, and that's what it is. And that information needs to be told and needs to be put out there, instead of the noise that surrounds the truth and the truth that is changed because of people's opinions and what other people think. You know, it's just like, let's figure out how everyone can gain access to the truth, and then let everyone's decisions be based upon that, as opposed to, you know, skewing what information people do see based on their location or their preferences of politics or their, you know, their search history.
It's asking for transparency as well, isn't it? Because when you flick through a fashion magazine, a very glossy fashion magazine, you see sort of like endless images of women looking unreal. Like, you could say it's beautiful, but anyway, I think what it's also asking for is like, how do those things happen? Like, what's the truth is like, show everything you have to show. Tell the story, explain everything, put information out there. If you don't, do you have something to hide? What is it that you're hiding? we're in that unfortunate stage at the moment where most companies, I think, whether it's like magazines or fashion brands, are semi-transparent, or they like to think they're transparent. They're transparent a bit. You can't really do it a little bit. You've either got to do it or you're not doing it. So we're like, again, it's another one of those like of our time buzzwords where it's like, yeah, no, let's talk about transparency. It's like, yes, let's. Because there's always something to talk about there. But then I guess unless we start to ask the question, they're not just going to like show everything. And they think a lot of the time, I'm sure a lot of brands think not everybody's interested. And they might be right. But it's not the point. The point is the information should be there, really. Mm-hmm. And the truth, well, I think the truth would be quite scary if we actually saw the truth. You know, I don't really. I know that there's an ugly side of the clothing industry, and I know a lot of people don't. You know, they don't need to go to the abattoir to carry on eating meat.
What are the biggest things that you believe are the most detrimental things about the fashion industry in our current time?
I think the volume is kind of disgusting. It really grosses me out. I mean, we like, as human beings, we're all kind of like decked out head to toe in clothes, different outfits every day, you know, multiple items. We have so much more than our parents, and our parents had so much more than their parents. And those little wardrobes that you used to get in the 1930s that were about like, you know, 50 centimetres wide are now like a room in your house. But people have this obsession with buying. Like everybody just wants more and more. And the marketeers of all the companies are really clever because they just make people just want to have more and more and more. It's put a huge strain on industry in a way. And it's giving a lot of people a lot of jobs, which is brilliant. But it has got to the point now where we know how polluting it's been as an industry, like number two. And we know that it has to change its ways, and we have to be more conscious of the decisions that we make. And perhaps it will also mean that we can't go on producing the volumes that we have been. And I hope people's perception about clothes and about what they have and quality and what they need for life isn't all about just the look. If a marketing campaign comes out and it's a new jacket that does 5 things, and their last jacket did 4 things or 3 things, and they think they have to have that other jacket, then if that's just like all the time we're convinced that we just need the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, and we don't have some sort of system in place where we can take back the other stuff, guarantee that we'll take the responsibility of doing something with all the other things that are not needed in life. We're kind of gathering, and then at the same time we're not sort of not putting back. So this whole conversation about sustainability is really, at the end of the day, it's about not about being circular and making sure that we really put things back, don't just kind of like keep guzzling the way we do at the moment. So, sorry, I went really around the houses there. Your question about what's the biggest issue, I think it's waste. If that's all of that.
Do you think, you know, that it's, does an equal responsibility fall upon the buyers and the brands and the sellers, or do you think it really needs to start in one other place?
No, I think it's everyone's responsibility. I think everybody needs to work at it at the same time. I mean, for years, as a designer, I was a designer for a very long time. I still am a designer. As a designer, we wanted to do things more ethically quite a long time ago. I say we. A lot of people that I know and have worked with over time. But do you think that if you can turn around to your bosses and say, we think we want to do more sustainable product within the range, when asked the question, how much will it cost? And you have to kind of like then do the whole moral issue about like, yes, but what does it cost not to do it? And try and have that sort of, not argument, but try putting that, selling that in, putting that case forward to the brand, to whether you can do it or not. That's been for quite a while now, because the bottom line with most companies is making money. And but now we have to sort of try and prove, as I think Patagonia has, that you can make money and you can sell clothes and you can do something good out of it. I mean, when they changed their mission statement to "We are in business to save our home planet," I thought, God, that's incredible. That's amazing. Which other company would even go close to that? Because, you know, it's got to make money. And I get it, you know, to employ all the people that it employs, it has to at least make enough money for all those people to work happily within it and to pay its factories well and all of that, you know. But yeah, it needs everybody to jump. Everyone needs to kind of like do it all at the same time, because then I think you'll start to see the shifts and the changes. But I go back to my point about the selling into the bosses. Those people up there, they need to back it. They need to support it. It has to be important to the very top of every company, and we're seeing more and more companies getting there. Harder for those ones that have already established themselves as not very sustainable and now trying to be sustainable. Easier for those small brands, but not so easy for those small brands to gain traction. Although I think with the power of the internet and everything now, the way people look at brands and the way people shop now, I mean, the high streets are dying. Shopping high streets are dying, but if you just look at brands that you respect online, you just buy it online. How is it that with shopping and retail and everything? What does it look like at the moment?
Well, I mean, Australia is in a pretty different position in many of the different states. Melbourne is essentially still completely shut down, so the retail side of things is brick and mortar stores are definitely not doing very well at all. But as you kind of spoke about, online is still performing. I'd assume. I actually live with one of the larger outdoor companies' retail managers, and we've had quite a few interesting conversations about what was forecasted and what's happening, and it's definitely a tough time, but online is a it's a world of its own. And I think you also touched on it before as well, like our desire to buy and gather things and own more things is made we can fulfill that desire quite easily when it's the click of a button, and we see these beautiful shiny things on a screen, and that little, I don't know what it is, be it dopamine hit that we get when we press buy and, wait a couple of days in anticipation for something to arrive. I think that whole world is turning pretty healthily here, to be honest. Yeah, it's, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting going forward. Have you seen many changes in, say, fashion and what the fashion industry is doing with this whole COVID situation? Is the industry taking time to reconsider what it's done in the past and making some swift changes?
I wish I could say yes. I think there are some stealth things happening, and I think there are some changes. There's some realities that are having to be faced. I think for a very long time, at the start of COVID, the industry definitely just wanted things to go back to the way it was before.
Mm.
And I still think a lot of companies are waiting for it to just go back. And I could be completely wrong about this, because I also trying to keep my ear to the ground as much as possible, recognise that there's a lot of people desperate to be able to go back out and socialise. And as soon as people are back out in front of other people again, the first thing they want to do is buy themselves more clothes to kind of, I don't know. It isn't, I do understand it. I mean, I love clothes. I love them. I mean, the whole reason why I got into this is because I just love clothes and designing clothes so much. And that pressing a button or going to an amazing store and buying something, it's a very, very nice feeling. The first time you put that thing on, that feeling that you get, that kind of, you feel kind of like so clean and fresh and ready, and it's great. It's lovely. But, you know, when I think back about when I used to get really excited about things like that, I really used to think that it was just about that, and it wasn't about where the garment had come from, how much it had cost, how much somebody would have made from that, who made my garment, which country was it made in. I mean, I wouldn't even look at the labels back, 10 years ago. I didn't care where it had been made. Or, sorry, I'm not answering your question. Because you were asking about, have I seen change in fashion at the moment? I mean, it's going to have to change. I think after all this time, it will be a year before we're out of this, at the least. People aren't buying so much stuff because they haven't got anywhere to go. And I think that was a motivation for people buying clothes. I've definitely decided I'm not going to buy anything else. I say that, and then I bought 2 books yesterday, but I'm not going to splurge on stuff that I've already got. It's ridiculous. I used to be obsessive about buying the same thing over and over and over again.
What's an example of that? What would you buy over and over again?
White t-shirts. I just like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Every time I saw one, I'd be like that. Oh yeah, it's a fresh white t-shirt. Not a very practical thing to keep buying. They don't stay white so long. But then I'm so weird about things like that, because then I can't throw them away. So really, what I should do is I should have them recycled into something else, and then I won't feel so bad about it. But anyway,
what would it? I would really, really love to know, along your journey to where you are now and the work that you do now, what were those pivotal moments, or the people that you met along the way that really shaped or changed your direction personally to want to be more of, I guess, like an ethical designer and someone who was a lot more conscious about making fashion more sustainable and ethical, really?
Yeah. Well, I could go way, 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 way back to school and teachers, but I won't. The first big break that I had, and what really put me onto the road of being able to design clothes in the first place, was Paul Smith, who and this sounds like I'm sort of doing big name dropping, but I met Paul Smith at a party, and there was a funny little story about how I'd set my sleeve on fire and he put it out with a glass of wine, which he can't remember. But it got me, I was in touch with him, and then desperately wanted to go to St Martin's College and study fashion, and wrote to him, and actually my friend John wrote to him and asked him whether he would think about paying for me to go to school. So I wouldn't have gone to fashion school if it hadn't been for Paul Smith, because he paid for that to happen, and I'm eternally grateful to him for that. So that was the first person, and he slightly mentored me through college as well. I'd go and see him occasionally, show my portfolio, to tell him about my designs and things, and he would sort of there's something very grounded about the way he kind of looks at fashion, and because he's got that sort of character and fun side of it as well, which kind of reminded me that you shouldn't be too serious about stuff. and he would always sort of like bring it into the realm of like what's really wearable, what's really commercial, but what's also a little bit of fun. So that was really massively empowering. My tutor at college, Louise Wilson, was a lot of people in the fashion industry will know her and her reputation as being somebody who's pushed out a lot of amazing talent through St Martin's College, and told me at the end of it, she said, "You're good," and that was from her. That was a massive compliment. So I gave me a bit of confidence, and then I went to go and work at Levi's for many years, and I had the creative director there who spotted. Well, she looked at my portfolio and offered me a job straight away, and I learned a lot from her and the team that had just been set up in London at the time. There was a design team, a lot of Scandinavians and people from the UK, and we were working in a big American company, so there was a lot of American influence with all of that, but a lot of do the right thing, quite powerful personalities and things like that. And while I was at Levi's, I kind of started to see how ugly sometimes clothing production could be, because we used to go to the factories quite a lot. And I'm not saying that the factories that Levi's work with are bad in any way, but you could just see, and back then, you know, like the amount of like bleaches and chemicals and dyes and things like that that were being used just in finished treatments and things, that we all started to get a little bit kind of uncomfortable about that side of, you know, the process. So we were coming up with ideas, like this was 2000, around that time, about ideas about efficiencies with pattern, about getting effects without using water, about alternative kind of like ways to dry or make garments look old without having, you know, we were having lots of those ideas. They were like quite separated and just niche at the time, so it took quite a long time to get all that together. But I had bosses. Maurizio Donardi was a great boss for me when I was in Amsterdam working for Levi's as well. He was like very supportive of my creative ideas, and if I'd go to him and say I really feel strongly we should do this, he was there for me, like kind of backing up the ideas and everything. So that was fantastic as a designer working in a huge organization, to have one person who had got your back, you know. So we did some amazing work together. And then, of course, I ended up going to Patagonia, and I met Yvonne Chenard at one of the picnic tables next to the reception at Patagonia, in the sounds of children screaming in the childcare right next to it. And it was like this homecoming kind of like feeling, where I was in a place where the values of the company and all the people that I met there was much more in line with me. And so we got on really well, and we talked about the 501 as a design and a design philosophy, and an evolution of a design and all that kind of principle. And Yvonne likes to go sort of like deep into stuff, and he's very philosophical about things. So he's a really good conversation. They offered me the job of creative director there, and I was there for 3.5 years. Amazing, amazing place to be. I got the biggest education or re-education from working there, to how to look and approach clothing and problem solve your way through processes and things, and do everything you can to not harm this planet. So yeah, I think all those people have been key to my success, definitely.
It's so nice to just sit back and kind of live that little journey with you, because that is a, you know the people that you mentioned, some of them are just like you say, incredibly influential people and very well known in the fashion space, and now we can we can just take all their lessons from you, and you're the go-to, which is great.
I don't think, well, maybe like sometimes I do get a chance occasionally to do educational stuff, and I'm just doing a Transformers education thing for Ravensbourne, which anyone can sign up for. It's going to be on the 16th of October. It's a 3-day event, an educational denim event. And I'm talking at that. And I'm going to start doing some work with South Wales University as well, doing some teaching. And I think sometimes I do get to the point where I feel like perhaps education might ultimately be my future, to be able to kind of, from all the experience that I've had over the years, to just give back as much as I can to try and encourage the next generation to do a better job than we did. At least kind of like revealing kind of elements of the process which could and should and need to be done better, and kind of like really help engage with not necessarily young people, but just people that really are in that learning stage, and spark some kind of interest and some passion there and everything. And then it always makes me feel so good when you know that you have that one student that stayed back at the end of a lecture and they come over and they've got 5 questions for you because they were so intimidated by everybody else not asking questions that they didn't speak up, and then they come up to you afterwards and you just think, okay, it's fine. But there were like 299 people that just left the room, and they just might have learned a little thing or two. But there's this one guy who is asking questions that you just think, you are going to make the world of difference. This is great. I feel like I did a really good job today. And I am talking about that. That is actually something that really happened. And he's an amazing designer, and he's now working for Mountain Hardware, and his name's Albert Arnold, and he's an amazing designer.
Brilliant. So, you know, what would you title the education that you want to provide in the next, like in the coming years?
How do I title it? Well, I suppose it's responsible design, isn't it? It's about kind of like taking the task of designing clothes and making sure that everybody thinks about it from all the different angles. And it's not just about what looks good anymore. It's about what is the best way of doing things. So, yeah, I guess it's responsible design.
Mm-hmm. And what, you've got a full curriculum and someone comes up to you and says, look, Miles, I love what you're teaching here, but, you know, we're changing the way we do university and you're only allowed 4 weeks of lecturing and you've got to pick 4 subjects. What would you go for? Like how would you try and distill the lifetime of work into 4 lessons?
Okay, I'll try and do this because I can think of 3. Right,
awesome.
One is textiles, because I think, unfortunately, there's not a lot of people that know very much about textiles in knitting and weaving and yarn, the art of creating a yarn and creating a weave and all of these things and all the different fibres and all of that sort of stuff. There's a huge education in that. We quite often have like, people will design garments and then they'll look for a fabric that's suitable for their garment. They don't do it the other way around. They don't design the fabric and then really start thinking about what garments are the right garments to create for that fabric. So I think there's a massive education in there. I think waste management is a huge thing, where from teaching people how to cut patterns without creating waste, with being just really efficient about all materials you use. That's another thing. I think that teaching people about the process and about kind of all the steps and stages that garments have to go through and where everything comes from and what the likelihood of carbon footprints would look like if you just think, oh, I just want that zipper and I want that fabric and I want that where all those things are coming from usually, and all this stuff that's just traveling all around the world, when you could have another idea. I think designing like kind of for repairability and things like that is really huge as well. So you have to kind of like make sure that everything's really easy to get to, zips can come out really easily, be replaced. That it's not just this thing that as soon as something goes wrong with it, it has to kind of like be put into landfill. And the other thing is washing. There's like most things that people buy are washed. So, and people don't know anything about that. And there's a huge industry in washing and finishing of garments. And that can be done a lot better. And we're still in our infancy of reducing water and maybe not so much dye. But there's still a huge amount of chemicals being used in the industry to try and get our garments to feel soft, or to get them to feel like a bit peachy, or a bit more like something that we've had for 10 years. So people need to know a little bit more about that too. So there's a few things. I mean, the list can just go on. Maybe I should design a course.
Mate, I would sign up. I want to just ask what else is going to be on there.
I want to be on that course.
Yeah.
So done.
Let's can the podcast and get on with the course design.
Okay, I'm moving to Australia.
Mate, I'm not moving to the UK. I've done that.
Oh, did you?
I have lived in the UK for about 4 years. Some time in London and also in Scotland.
Wow, where were you in Scotland?
I was up in Aberdeen, actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and funny enough, my partner at the time was a fashion buyer, so I had this really roundabout way. I am and was at the time an engineer, but I had this real insight into the world of buying and fashion and garment design, and like you said, like the fabrics and the textiles and all these small little nuances that when you pick something up sometimes in a shop, you just can't fathom what's gone into creating it, you know?
No.
It's amazing.
Yeah. There's such technicalities into it now. I feel quite far behind with it as well. I mean, it was interesting, obviously, working at Patagonia, the development time we would have to create in a calendar of building the best product was, it used to just realistically take so long, because it was like science fiction. You know, you were like taking something that was almost impossible to work with, but you know, that's fantastic to kind of like learn things about that kind of construction. I mean, I'm blown away by things like all this body mapping work now. You know, all this kind of like this complete circular knitting, where it just scans the body form, and then kind of like you can just press a button and you can have a whole suit made that's exactly your shape. It just comes out in like minutes.
Wow.
I do think that is probably going to become quite normal, and not that we're all going to walk around in skin tight cat suits, but you know, there is a way of maybe using that technology for something else.
Mm-hmm. I know,
made to measure.
Currently, at the moment, you know, we've spoken about it a lot, and I'd love to roll with the example of you know, using Patagonia. That you know, they've had a large push on hemp as a product, and also now there's a large kind of awareness that's being created about regenerative organic cotton, and I'd love to know what are the fabrics and the textiles out there that you think should really play a part in the future of fashion.
Just to kind of talk a little bit about the hemp. It is perhaps the most sustainable natural fibre that exists in the world. I say perhaps, I'm pretty sure it is. It has so many benefits to not just the ground that it grows in, but the way it grows, what the plant can be used for, both in terms of fibre, but also in pharmaceutical industry as well. It is just an incredible plant. and everybody really needs to get behind it. And even if it's just been used in blends, in alternative fabrics, I think there's a massive future there. I hope that, because Patagonia are using it and have been using it a lot, and they're also looking at kind of like developing, I'm sure they won't mind me saying, they're also developing technical fabrics using hemp as well. So I think when people think about hemp as a fibre to a fabric, they think sort of granola-y, hacky sack, kind of hippie, I've just come back from my world travels kind of clothing, you know, the drawstring pants. And but actually it can be beautiful. I mean, I have a swatch in my studio of a hemp, it's hemp silk blend, and it's a knit, and it's absolutely beautiful because it just takes the dye like nothing else as well. Anyway, that's hemp. Hemp is for sure the future. I have like mixed feelings about synthetics. We have like so much of them, and I think we need to kind of like be responsible for the ones that have already been created and how they could possibly be recycled back into something else. 100% synthetic. I think we've got so clever with the compositions and the blends of fabrics. It makes it difficult sometimes to think about how you can recycle something which is made from 5 different fibres. So I'm more like trying to think about for the future how to keep the naturals to the natural. Even if you put in wool or silk in with like linen or hemp or cotton, it's still kind of like of the naturals world, which means that then it's biodegradable. It means that it can go into the ground. It means it can be compostable. Whereas if it's got anything synthetic in there, it's not going to. But it doesn't mean that if you have like 100% synthetic, it couldn't be, in simple terms, melted down and put back into something else. So, and I think we need synthetics. I think synthetics kind of like do an incredible job. I'm not anti-plastic, as some people kind of like quite like to be about stuff. I think plastic was a brilliant thing that was invented. We just didn't think about managing the waste of it. Mm. So we just literally just sort of drop it into the ocean or stick it in the landfill and sweep it under the carpet and pretend it doesn't exist anymore. But, you know, there's like, when you hear about Refriba and all those kind of amazing technologies that just literally collecting fishing nets and turning it back into nylon fibre that can be used in garments, that's just a wonderful circular way of like looking at the world. You know, take something which is considered to be trash and turn it into something which can be of beauty or of use or some sort of practical element. And then at the end of its lifestyle cycle, it can be recycled back into something else again and again and again. And I think that's, you know, we have to get into that, especially with fabrics and garment constructions, and everything needs to be easily sort of taken apart and pulped and all of that stuff too.
Let's go back a little, because I'd love to get a little bit more of your thoughts on the hemp side of things. Did it really just get bastardized as a product due to its relationship with like the marijuana plant and everything that, like, just the misinformation that exists between those two strains of plant?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But it's, you know, it's a distant cousin, and there's no you could smoke yourself to death and perhaps not feel in any way kind of stoned or whatever high. I mean, that wouldn't be a very nice high. Very sore throat high. It like in the 1930s, it's literally kind of like across the world banned, and in so many countries. The only country that didn't really stop growing it was China. So China has, until very recently, had the monopoly, if you like, or, you know, the domineering growth of that industrial hemp. And that's all changing now because the farm ban got lifted in 2018 in the US. 3 weeks ago, I think it was now, the ban in Pakistan was lifted, which is amazing because they're like such an amazing cotton growing country. And now they're going to be an amazing hemp growing country. And those two fibers spun and woven together makes incredible fabric. So, it was demonized in the 30s and now, like nearly 100 years later, it's crazy, isn't it? 100 years.
Yeah.
We can go back to growing it again more freely. But it's still, I mean, I just thought as soon as the ban was lifted, we'd all be wearing hemp now because I'm not optimistic about how long these things take because I just know how good it is. And we're still kind of like yet to see, because you can't just grow it. Mm-hmm. It's much bigger than that. You've got to have the spinning, you've got to have the wheat, you've got to create the yarn. How are you going to do that if you just if you don't have it in the country where it's grown?
Yeah,
you can't just sort of transport like bales and bales of hemp to other countries. That's just not very sustainable. So there's an infrastructure that has to be put in place to be able to manage the hemp. If we hadn't, demonized it in the 1930s, can you imagine where we'd be with it now?
Oh,
we're literally baby steps.
Yeah, it comes back to what we were saying before, right? Like the truth. What is the truth? And it just sounds like the truth about hemp really was covered up, or it was skewed to be not what it is, like not the reality,
No, I mean it was quite political, I think. But there's a lot of like politics which doesn't speak the truth. I mean, we get it every day, don't we?
Mm.
We live with it all the time. So maybe in 100 years' time, we're going to find out about this other stuff that, it's all like all this recycling stuff at the moment. I have to kind of, sometimes there's a little bit of conspiracy theories going on. But there's definitely the landfill issues, the lack of support from governments to how to deal with waste is it's quite criminal. And also, the deforestation, the land grabbing, we know that we're a dying planet. We know what the causes are of this, and yet we're still not able to do anything about it. We still can't kind of slow things down, or maybe you see in some ways this whole COVID thing is as bad as it is. It might be teaching us a bit of a lesson to slow down and to really think about what we're doing for a minute before we go back to it.
Yeah. It's definitely, on a personal note, it's definitely given me time to understand a little bit more how values need to play a role, or not need to, but how values can play a role in having a really directional and intentional and, I guess, in some ways a more simplified life, because, you've got your values and you base your decisions on those and use them as your guiding principles. And it's just a lot more of the other noise just falls away because it just quickly is a yes or no against your values. And yeah. We spoke about it just before I pressed record, actually, and it was your opportunity to come out to Australia, down to the Tarkine wilderness when you worked for Patagonia. And what are those experiences like for you, and how do they shape your view on what you do as your profession in design and responsible design?
I think that when you work in design, a lot of the time you're working in an office with lots of other designers, lots of other people, and it's a very fast and furious industry to work in. It's always like go, 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 and stress levels. things going wrong and the walls crashing around you sometimes, and it's quite tense. And we don't always give ourselves the chance to really get out and examine or reflect on what it is that we're doing as companies, I think, or as brands. And I was just really, really fortunate that Patagonia really supported the research to go to the lengths of flying me and Chris Teig, who was the head of graphics, out to go and see for ourselves what's going on out in the Tarkine. And it's not like I was keeping a little sketchbook with me, designing kind of like clothes while I was experiencing that. But I think, when you want to try and help tell the world about the atrocity that's happening out there, and we were trying to really, through thinking about the Tarkine on many levels, what we could take from doing a trip like that to go and see it, how to go back and work with the marketing team, how to build clothes, how to sort of tell a story on a graphic T-shirt, how to put it into a print, or use those colours, or that, anything we could to try and help stop what was happening out there. And that's still a fight for Patagonia. Still really believe in doing whatever they can to try and help public lands. And that's what you get when you work for a really respectful company with empathy like Patagonia. But a lot of clothing companies wouldn't think it was really very important. They might just sort of the day after you finish designing a collection, ask you to design another one. And they'll just keep doing that until the designer just goes, I think I've had enough of this. I'm going to start doing pottery, which is not a bad thing. It's actually quite good to get your hands dirty sometimes. But I just have been very lucky. Both Levi's and Patagonia have been able to do extensive research trips and to learn from the experience and be kind of absorbed in what you have to go back to do, but be somewhere so open as a landscape that is, to me, probably the most inspiring thing to design clothes, to be as far away from them as possible.
Oh, wow. Yeah, wow, that's so incredible. What a way to sum it up. Design clothes by being as far away as possible from them.
I mean, I wasn't naked walking around. I mean, I was dressed, fully dressed. And I was wearing quite sort of protective stuff, and it pissed it down raining the whole time we were in the Tarkine. So I was like rain ponchos and everything kind of like layered up rainwear. But there's also something really incredible as well about going to the climate that you're designing for as well. You can't because a lot of people, it's so funny when they design collections and they'll be like in the middle of winter and they're having to design sort of swimwear for the following summer, and they're like designing bikinis and board shorts and things, and you're thinking, how can you do that properly when there's like 2 meters of snow outside? It just seems a bit strange. So I feel like it's really good to design in the at least in the climate that you're in. Does really help.
It's so true. Yeah, it's so interesting. It's so simple as well, right? Like it just is. Now you say that, it makes really perfect sense. Yeah,
because you just have a feeling straight away, don't you? Like, I'm cold. What would I like right now? What do I need to sort of like?
Yeah.
I'm always kind of like thinking about fibers and texture next to skin and all that kind of thing. Whether it's really, really hot weather or really, really cold weather, you kind of like ultimately have more of a feeling for it. I just feel really sorry for those knitwear designers. It'd be like the middle of August, which I know is not the hottest time for you, but for us it should be the hottest time. And then they sort of have to get all those really thick, kind of like heavy Shetland wool and all these like mohairs and fibery kind of like knitwear. Start imagining what it's like to be in the freezing cold weather. It's not easy.
That's a really great insight into the world of a designer. It's just you as you tell that, you can really be there and feel it, and be amongst it. Yeah. That's great. So what's it like now then? You're not working specifically for a big parent company, I don't believe, are you? You're more kind of consulting.
I'm not. No, and I kind of, to be honest, I came out and away from Patagonia 2018, and I've had the last 2 years of. I was originally thinking, I wonder if I should just start to put the feelers out for which companies out there might be looking for somebody, especially if it was in the UK or close to the UK. I could kind of have gone back into another big job. But I got asked to do one small project, and then it led to another one, and then it led to another one. And then I was also kind of like being able to invest in my own personal time and start doing like creative stuff like the pottery, and just spending a lot more time at home and sort of investing in our outside space and growing a garden and growing vegetables and all that sort of stuff. It's become very important to me as a human being. It's not all about a job and a career. It's about surviving and about being happy and living simply. So I have about 4 projects on the go at the moment, and it varies quite a lot from brand to mill to education to a really nice project that I'm doing. I'm designing with my brother-in-law. I'm doing the interiors of cabins that are going to be built to put in very rural woodland. They're movable cabins, but it's going to be run like a hotel, and it's all going to be very natural and basically giving people a very green experience, if you like, from food to where they are, and outside fires and all that kind of stuff. So that creatively, as a creative, I'm not just into designing clothes. If anything creative comes my way that I think that's really interesting, I'm fascinated by unpicking it all apart and finding ways to remake it or to create it or to design it. And I get really excited by new challenges and things. So I haven't designed a car yet, but I'm really looking for a partner, a company that would like employ me to design a car for them, because I've never designed a car before. I think that could be really interesting.
Yeah, go get after it. That would be unreal. And so, and all of the projects that you work on still have the common thread of and include all the experience that you've had in sustainable design and responsible design?
Yeah, I couldn't do it any other way. There'd be absolutely no way I could do that. I couldn't leave Patagonia and no, it has to. I mean, it's what I said before about it has to make sense. That makes sense. So there is, for me, no other way that I could work. Everything has to be as sustainable as possible.
And what's your favorite pottery piece? What are you working on that you're perfecting?
Yeah, so I'm really into. Well, there's a couple. Here's one I made earlier, but here's one I made earlier. So
it's not too bad.
This glaze is quite interesting. What my old pottery teacher in California, Mark, taught me was that if you part bake clay in the kiln for a while first, and then you smash it all up with a hammer, and then you wedge that grit back into a virgin clay, you get this thing where it pops out of the glaze when you have afterwards. So that's a technique that I quite like at the moment. The vessels that I'm making a lot at the moment, I think I'm just really into the shape, is I really like bowls, but I really like tall bowls because it means that the heat of the food at the bottom of the bowl stays hotter for longer. When you have a really, really open shape like that, the heat just goes out of it straight away. So when we have like coffee cups and things like this, this will stay hot for a very long time. But if I opened it right up into a morning cup, it will cool down. So if I'm in a rush on my way to work in the morning, an open cup. Those are the shapes that I really like.
Wow. It's so incredible just to hear that as a small little insight as well. You've given us so many insights into the mind of a designer, like the coffee shape, the coffee mug shape, and how it relates to temperature, it's just such a
those things are often either things that you've found out for yourself or that you got taught along the way. And I love it when there's people that give you like an idea for something and then you can take it on and then develop the idea. There's so much in that. I think it's quite intimidating sometimes as a designer that you think that you always have to kind of like come up with really new ideas. Like you have to change the wheel, reinvent the wheel, and come up with like radically new ideas. I don't feel under pressure to do anything like that, and I don't think designers should either. I think it's more about looking for what's been either designed really well before and is really good, and the design can be evolved, or I think sometimes you're looking for like a really good idea where maybe they just didn't quite get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of like take the motivation behind the idea and then you can kind of develop that and create something new with it as well. I think most things are already existing, it feels sometimes, but we can just kind of keep learning from each other in that way. And, talking to other friends as well who are designers or looking at different interpretations of things and thinking about how you would do that or how you could do it better or how you do it differently.
Mm-hmm.
Always really good.
It sounds very much like the Kaizen theory, the Japanese Kaizen theory. You're aware of that, I'd imagine.
A little, but I wouldn't know so much about it that I could talk about it.
Well, just as a small little side note, it's basically translated as improvement, Kaizen, and that is so like every day you look to improve on what currently exists just a little bit, like the smallest of fractions. But if you do that and then you have that mindset over time, you will develop as someone who has that mindset to be able to improve things. And if you do it by a small fraction every time, then it obviously that's going to add up and make a big change by the end.
But I think it was that really got me into denim in the first place. So working with jeans, because when I used to tell people that I designed jeans, a lot of the time the response I used to get from perfect strangers was, "So what do you do?" And I go, "Well, I do jeans," and they go, "So what do you do?" Because they've already been designed, right? So I really got into a product which if you know all the elements really well that make a pair of jeans, the tinkering with all of those elements a little bit and putting it back together again can create something kind of like quite new feeling and special in that way. So that's why denim has become like such a big passion of mine, for just that little movement of design and knowing just how much to put into it and the balance and everything. It's quite a delicate thing in a way, and a very simple thing. And then you see so many people kind of like designing it and getting it so wrong because they didn't quite get the balance right.
Well, there are so many moving parts on a car. I can't wait for you to start tinkering with every single one of those.
Exactly. I know. Yeah. I got years and years ago, it didn't happen, but I got asked to do a collaboration with Airstream. And I was going to do an interior for Airstream, and I had it all planned out. It was going to be all denim and copper, and so it was all going to be. Actually, well, I think I'd asked if it might be possible that we create a copper Airstream, and then do the inside denim and copper. And I had it all worked out. It's going to be absolutely amazing. So I love doing things like that. It's great.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But yeah, just like one simple idea like that, and then suddenly when you start looking into it, and then you start kind of thinking about all the things, and how would you do a door handle? Well, you could, you make it like a shank button, but it's not a shank button. It's a door handle. I think keeping ideas quite simple to begin with, a simple concept, and then suddenly it kind of starts to feed a very clear message as a design in the end.
Yeah.
Not lazy thinking, it's more kind of like a bit of restriction to design is a good thing, I think.
So what's the wise wisdom you're going to leave us with on after our conversation today? For I almost, for anyone who, because I feel like everyone does have a creative bone in their body, but quite often it gets stuffed away, and I feel like even just picking up a pencil and some paper sometimes and just having a scribble and just try to be creative in some way can be magical. So what's your wisdom?
You got to reconnect with it, I think, because when we're kids, when we first start going to school, most of the things that we do are creative, as far as sitting down at tables and learning and all that stuff, drawing, colouring in, you do that. And it's not like taught, it's just we're expressing ourselves. And then suddenly we stop doing it. And people get I can't draw. Well, it's not about drawing, it's about you finding the pleasure still in making marks on a piece of paper or, whatever it is. And I do think it's really important to just exercise that muscle in your brain and that feeling in your hand or what it can evoke. I think it leads on to all kinds of things if you're open enough to it. We all have it, as you say. You go to places like Japan, 8 people out of 10 are creative. Here, and I'm not sure how it is in Australia, but here I would say it's probably about 2 people in 10 are creative or think that they are. So, people can do creative things, they can kind of make beautiful cakes, they can create beautiful gardens, but they still don't think they're creative because they can't draw. So we just have to look for ways to be creative. I think it just brings out a really nice, playful side to ourselves that we get so bogged down with money and responsibilities and home life and stuff, and we don't kind of often let ourselves exercise the right to be able to be artistic. So I do look for everything that I do. Even if I drop something on the floor and have to bend down and pick it up, I try and do it as creatively as I can.
Mate, thanks so much for sharing that. That is wisdom, mate. That is so good.
Well, I hope so.
Absolutely. It's been such a pleasant conversation, and really you've thrown out so many seeds, and definitely some of them will land and start growing in definitely my world, and hopefully other people's as well. I have no doubt. Yeah.
That's good. Well, good luck.
Thanks, mate. Keep being the rock star that you are, mate. We need more people like you in the world.
Oh, thanks. That's great.
Have a great day, mate. I look forward to seeing you in the Tarkine again next year, all right?
I'd love that. That'd be
awesome.
Amazing. Okay. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us again for another episode of Stokely. I really hope you enjoyed the insights that Miles was able to share with us today. And if you'd like to know more about Miles, you can check him out on his website, which is milesjohnson.co.uk. I really found this conversation interesting, and I have really been able to look at things differently as I go through my day-to-day world. And it's really insightful to understand how things really do carry a lot of thought in every single thing that is designed in this world and created. So I really hope again that this sparks a conversation about that, and also sparks your own creativity in a way that it may never have been sparked before. So we look forward to hearing from you, or we look forward to just tuning in again next time with you. Thanks a lot for your time and effort. We really do appreciate it. Hit us up on Instagram, and we'll talk to you soon.